Wa-Kyendo, and I've got questions on economics, on policy. So today, I want to go over what happened on some of my observations from a pre-budget hearing, which is a forum the Institute of Economic Affairs puts together to invite members of the private sector and civil society to put forward proposals for a citizen budget, right? So the budget cycle already begins as the other one ends, and you look for an opportunity to make proposals to the government on budget. So first, I'll just go over to give you a general view of what the content of these presentations, but the content is not the point. I mean, just to say, okay, this is what people want, right? This is what the private sector or those who were present representing sections of the private sector saw as the problems they're facing, and then these are the requests they made, or rather the proposals they put forward for the budget. And then in addition to that, there was commentary, there was chatter, there was conversation in the forum. And so it's to understand, okay, what was the nature of the conversation and what does it say about where the country of Kenya is at this moment? So the presentations were made on behalf of the education sector, the banking sector, the agricultural sector and manufacturing sector, and ICT, right? Information Communication Technology. And these three are sufficient to just give us a taste of what's going on in the country and what some concerns might be. So the budget priorities for seamless transition into senior school were put forward by Usawa Agenda, and they presented 4 proposals. In their view, the priorities should be to accelerate investments in school infrastructure, to bridge the digital divide, and to strengthen teacher capacity and professional development, and enhance monitoring, accountability, and coordination. The Kenya Bankers Association, representing the banking sector, for them, with the thematic thrust, that Kenya should restore the purchasing power for Kenyans and businesses. Proposals by the Kenya Bankers Association were namely to increase production, increase Kenyan exports, increase the Kenyan public's confidence and trust in government, enhance the growth of Kenyan mid-size and small MSMEs, medium and small enterprises, right? Yeah. And to increase local investment in productive economy and spur economic vibrancy in order to raise the taxes collected. The Kenya Bankers Association estimates that these aims would result in a country whose political and economic environment had stabilized ahead of the general elections. So in general, the banking sector, what are they facing? They're facing a situation whereby the government is, well, Kenyans are not, the demand, they think, has fallen. They're concerned that demand always seems to sink just before elections. They're concerned about what this means for their bottom line. What about the agriculture sector? Well, for them, policy recommendations for the agriculture sector was 5. Namely, the strengthening of public expenditure, the expansion of public-private partnerships for irrigation, storage, and processing, the creation of conditional grants for counties, and the improvement of subsidy targeting and leveraging of private input distribution, and the protection of development spending at the national and county levels. So in sum, what they were saying was, the sector isn't receiving enough support. Subsidy programs are run like you have a national government and county government running their own programs that don't even coordinate with each other, and essentially that spending, development spending, is actually falling in real terms, right? So they want more spending. The manufacturing sector, well, the Kenya Association for Manufacturers recommended that the 2026-27 budget include lower rates for raw materials and intermediate products, a review of citizens' tax income to enhance the cost of living and purchasing power, the identification and support for specific subsectors like food and beverage production and pharmaceuticals, the creation of a conducive business environment, the establishment of a predictable tax regime to avoid investor uncertainty, the lowering of regulatory burdens by national and county governments, fiscal discipline and debt management, and the managing of domestic debt accrual to avoid crowding out of the private sector. Essentially, manufacturers are moving out of Kenya, and they're moving out because production is just too costly. That's the essence. They want lower taxes, simpler taxes, lower costs of production, fewer regulations, all the sort of things that can be avoided. Sometimes monetary policy that, like, for almost 25 or plus years was on the one hand to primary deficits were too low, and then they grew expansively too quickly, right? That's an example of the problems that they're facing. The ICT sector. So the ICT sector they made proposals directed at 4 problems, namely connectivity, cybersecurity, cloud adoption, and AI and innovation. Proposed interventions for each of these problems were the ring fencing of budgets for the rollout of 4G connections in Kenya's rural areas, the increase of allocations for cybersecurity, fiscal incentives to drive the local adoption of cloud computing server platforms, and an AI innovation fund. So that's what each of these sectors were demanding. Now, in sum, what the sectors are saying is this. They're asking for more funding, more government support. They are concerned that that macroeconomic policy is just making it so uncompetitive for them so from a supply side, production is too costly, regulations are too many, taxes are too high. On the demand side, right, for these same suppliers, demand, households are not, their disposable income is not growing, so they're seeing diminished business prospects from this, and they're concerned about things, political instability, and what that means for business. So that's the essence of what each of these sectors want, and I'll end that there. And in the next part, we'll continue to explore, first of all, the arguments for each of these sectors, and then explore the nature of the government's response, given that some members of parliament were actually present.